Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Down the back. Can everyone hear me down the back? I've been sitting down the back and it's a little bit quiet, so just wave your arms if you can't hear me. Firstly, just to get everyone warmed up, how many people in the room don't own a boat? Hands up if you don't own a boat. Okay. And hands up the people who do own a boat. About a 70-30 split in favour of boat owners. Congratulations. So I want to talk for about 10 minutes, and basically what I want to do is I want to tell you some stories. Who am I? Well, I started the Boatshed organisation 18 years ago. We're now represented in 63 locations from Seattle to Phuket. We've sold 20,000 boats, and we've now got 731,000 people currently using our platform. Basically, we've developed a whole range of processes. They call us a yacht brokerage, but basically we are involved with from the consumer from the moment they're thinking about selling their boat right the way through to when it's delivered to its new owner, or with customers who are considering buying a boat at some stage. And we've developed a whole range of different systems to engage with those customers. So the stories I want to tell you about today are really specific to our business, but I think that they have ramifications for other businesses, and that's what we're all here for and what we're in it for. Okay, some metrics, lots of statistics today. So the numbers are kind of mind-boggling. We've got 20,000 marinas, we've got 1 million boats being sold a year, we've got 20 million, that's a conservative estimate, of boats worldwide. And we've got 50,000 marine companies. That's most of us in this room are in the marine business, so those companies are vitally important. I want to talk about what I'm referring to as the iceberg. And the iceberg, basically, if you look at this chart, if we look at people who spend £500 or less on boating a year, all right, they're at the bottom of the iceberg. At the top of the people are the people who spend £10,000 or more on their boating habit a year. And what we can see from this chart is that 95% of the people are sitting below the surface. So that's lots of people who are into boating, who like boats, but are spending less than £10,000 a year. So to put some context on that, I own a 40-foot sailboat, and if we work on the principle that a 40-foot boat costs £10,000 a year to keep, it might probably cost a little bit more than that, but I don't like to tell anyone, especially not the rest of my family. If we think that a 40-foot boat costs £10,000, that means there are 95 other boat owners in that iceberg for every 40-foot boat. Again, I'm talking stories. So, stories at Boatshed. Here's an example. It's about the boat buying journey. This is a typical customer, came to us 18 years ago and bought a £1,600 sailing dinghy, has progressed through a variety of boats and are now on their 6th boat, which is an open 60. And that's just a typical example. Customers that are buying through the Boatshed organisation 4, 5, 6 times. Equally, we've got boats that are selling on lots of occasions. So this particular boat has been sold to 14 different customers. So that's 14 sets of ownership that it's been through. Boatshed is very much about measurement, right? Because we're monitoring all of the activity across those 700,000 users and the 20,000 boats that we've sold, we know some interesting facts. So, for instance, of the boats that we sell multiple times, the average length of ownership is 3.7 years. We also we work with lots of companies who supply a variety of service from marinas to boat maintenance. And we know that a boat costs 18% of its value to keep. Now, we throw in the statistic of most people use their boats on average 11 days per year. So for £100,000 boat, that's costing you £1,636 every time you take it out. Another interesting fact is that 18%, all of that money is going back into the industry. And if we think from the prospect of boats that are sold multiple times, this all goes to help the 50,000 companies that are in there. Depreciation, it's a dirty word in the boat industry. Nobody seems to want to talk about it. However, we've been studying it quite closely because I think it has very big ramifications for people selling new boats. We talk about getting more people into boating. Is the risk too high? If we look at depreciation in the car industry, the lowest, these are 2015 figures, the vehicle that depreciated the least was the Land Rover Defender at 21%. Any Mazda drivers in the audience, you're unlucky because the Mazda is depreciating at 37%. Now, whilst we don't talk about depreciation in the boat industry, if we put a conservative figure of 15% in there, that means after 4 years, our boat is only worth 52% of its original price. So, new boat manufacturers, we must question what kind of consumers are going to take this sort of risk. In the second-hand market, this is an interesting boat. It's a 1918 Nauticat, very popular Nauticat 38. We sold it first in 2003, and it sold for 57.5 grand. We sold it then in 2012, and it went for 49.5. So, whilst depreciation exists, it seems to reach some point where it levels out, and the boats always seem to retain a standard value. Did you know that there are 104 brands of cola in the world? You can see it on Wikipedia. The reason I'm putting this slide up is that Coca-Cola, certainly in the 1970s, did a very smart thing. They wanted to get people to drink more Coca-Cola, but rather than pursuing people who were drinking beer or drinking lemonade or drinking tea, they thought, let's tackle all the people who actually drink cola, because they're already cola converts, surely we can sell them more. There's going to be a lot of talk, and there is a lot of talk in the industry about the fact that there's less people involved. And I think sometimes we need to challenge that thought. If we look at characters like Dave Selby, who recently at the Southampton Boat Show was promoting buying a boat for £500. It doesn't necessarily need to be an expensive proposition. If we look at Jan Socrates, she's currently sailing around the world. This is her third attempt. She's 72 years of age. She's the oldest person to sail around the world. So you don't necessarily, you're not too old to go boating. We talk about the youth not interested in sailing. If you look at La Vagabond, for instance, those avid YouTube watchers, anyone who watches the La Vagabond series, these guys are generating 3 million views per month in terms of going sailing. So rather than us focusing on new markets, motor caravanners, cyclists, golfers, why don't we look at the people further down the iceberg and see if we can bring them up? Those people spending £500 a year on boating, they're already into boats. Let's bring them up the iceberg. So the good news here is that people with small boats need to be treated very, very nicely, because those small boat users, those people who are into sailing, are going to become our customers of the future. One of the things at Boatshed that we do, I think, quite well is measurement. Here we've got the results of 18 years, gives us 142 million boat viewings. And we're using that data in a variety of different ways. For instance, traditionally, the boat industry needed experts to advise people, for instance, like us brokers, to advise them on what sort of boats to buy. And as we know, in the car industry, if you buy an Audi, you would understand that an Audi brand is similar to Mercedes or BMW. But in the boat industry, we've got multiple manufacturers and multiple models, and people very often don't understand the associations. So what we're doing at Boatshed is using machine learning to work out where certain boats are relevant to certain customers. I'm looking for a Rival 34. What other long-keeled traditional fiberglass boats are available? The good thing is that 18 years of data gives us all of those associations and helps people in terms of understanding what sort of boat they could buy in the second-hand marketplace. We can use this data in other ways. The data tells us the location of boats. Most of the boats that we sell are distant sales. They're selling from the UK to countries like Norway, or from the US to Asia. It tells us what types of boats are buying. Depreciation, that dreaded word, we can work out how much boats are actually worth. Plus we can look at buyer trends. What sort of boats are people interested in buying at the moment? And what about seller trends? And also information on what processes work best in the industry. The engineers at Boatshed put this little GIF up here. Here we're interrogating the Boatshed data geographically as well. In countries where we operate, it tells us specific boat prices and the length of time it takes to sell a boat. Again, everyone selling a boat wants to understand that. And I think technology has to play a really big part in this industry. Certainly it's something that we've embraced, and we've also worked with other partners to develop new technology and new web-based platforms. The MIA, for instance, we developed an app to enable surveyors to do pre-sale assessments on boats. A bit like buying a car. You can get a 54-point check before you purchase it. eBay is great for selling boats, but you can't have a boat survey. So we developed boat bids so that people could bid on boats but can still have them surveyed. We need to engage young people in what it's like to be on a boat. We developed a VR platform to enable people to look at famous boats like Gypsy Moth. You can go inside Gypsy Moth now by wearing your VR headset. So I'm very, very keen to work with people in the industry and set up partnerships. And for that reason, I'm just mentioning this. Boatshed is good at building technology. Would people be open to the idea of boatrecycle.com? Basically, an industry platform that we can develop new tools, new information, and new systems to help with the whole circular economy and boat recycling. So there we go. I hope that's made sense to everybody, and I'll leave you with one thought. Just make sure that as an industry, we're not always focusing on the top shiny bit of the iceberg.